funded about 6 or 7 speaker events. The first one was the glass windows, stained glass windows at St. Paul's. The second one is this one, Roger Williams in person. The third one is Wickford Walk for Kids. You'll see that. I don't know how you got information on this. There's 4 or 5 different sources. But go to that same source and you'll see the information for Kim Cranston's Wickford Walk for Kids. And then on May 8th, we have from the archives in the state of Rhode Island, original documents from the American Revolution. We're going to have them right up here so you can see them. And we're going to talk about them. And that'll be on May 8th. The Wickford Walk for Kids will be on April 17th. And of course, the second one in the series is tonight. As you know, due to the benefits of time travel, we have Roger Williams here today. He will be in character, and although he has a presentation, we'll have a Q&A at the end. And largely want you to know that you can drive this in any direction you want to drive this. Roger has his own agenda, but he's here for you today. So if you want to drive it in the direction that you want, let's go. Let's do that. Like I said, we have Roger Williams here due to time travel, kind of a cool technology, I think. But some people have been calling him John McNiff. He's born and brought up in Rhode Island. He's an anthropologist and historian. He worked with the National Park Service. In 1997, was stationed as a park ranger at the, appropriately, the Roger Williams National Memorial in Providence. Roger Williams, as most of you probably know, is a well-known aspect of the founding of the United States. He grew up in England. He was educated there. And then he decided, for whatever reason, well, religious freedom, I'm going to leave there and come here. He was then kicked out of the Massachusetts Bay Colony and came here and founded Rhode Island. And many other things, religious freedom as we know it today. So he is also a poet, and I'm going to leave it at that. I think it sort of sums up the way he thought, what was in his head and what was in his heart. Boreth not proud English of thy birth and blood. Thy brother Indian is by birth as good. One of blood God made him and thee and all, as wise, as fair, as strong, as personal. And that's how I sort of look at his presence here today. What's in his head? What's in his heart? Why did he leave his home? Why did he come here? And what did he give us? So let me see if I can find this guy. Time travel's a little tricky, but I'll be back in a minute. Oh, there he is. Ladies and gentlemen, Roger Williams.
Good morrow, my friends and loving neighbors. Well, Oscar Wilcossen, as I now have done so friends might say. I'm Roger Williams. I'm asked here to tell you a little bit about my own self, but to do that, I should tell you about the world that I grew up in, which is very different from your own understanding, but also not very different at all. All of Europe, all of the land ruled by the Turks, by the Rus, by the Poles, by the Slavs, most of Africa, most of the world that we know, had this idea about the way the entire universe should work. And it's called the Great Chain of Being. With God at the very top. Underneath that, the angels. Underneath that, the kings and the emperors. Underneath that, the nobility, the upper classes, the working classes, the lower classes. And then come the animals. The flying animals, the walking animals, the crawling animals, the fish, and of course the superior fish are the flying fish, because but everything in the universe has its place in this great chain of being. And at the very bottom is the sludge and the slime and the mold and the rot. Everything on this great chain of being. The kings are there because God wants them to be there. That is the way we understood this. Well, that is the way most people understood this. So now I tell you about the history just before I was born, because this set the stage that I grew up in. England was a place of conflict when I was born. And that conflict stems all the way back. I'm familiar with Henry VIII. This great king of England, 6 wives, divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived. But as a young prince, he married the daughter of the king and queen of Spain, Ferdinand and Isabella. Catherine. And they were married for a good 20 years or so. They had a daughter, but Henry needed a son to make sure that there would be an heir to the throne. His father had fought for 30 years in a civil war to get the throne, and they wanted to be absolutely sure that there would be a legitimate heir to the throne in England and not go through this war again. So Henry wrote to the Pope in Rome saying, I wish to leave this wife of mine, of many years and 1 daughter, and marry someone else. And the Pope started to agree to it, and the king in Spain reminded his nephew, the Pope, that that would be ruinous to his daughter. So the Pope said, no, we are not going to do this. And Henry, being the kind of fellow he was, now picture this. Most English people are in the neighborhood of 5'6", 5'7", 5'8". Henry is 6'3" tall. Gorgeous when he was a young man. He was an athlete. He was a tennis player and won every tennis match he was in, probably because he was the prince. But he also was involved in jousting, where you get on horseback in armor, and you take a long lance and you run at another person in horseback and in armor, and he got injured in that, and that's when he got fat. Henry VIII divorced Catherine, married Anne. They had a daughter. Anne lost her head at something or other, and it goes on and on and on, and Henry had a son eventually, Edward. And Henry, well, you can't live forever. Henry died, and his first daughter, Catherine, daughter of Catherine, no, I'm sorry, that would be Mary, came to the throne. Mary came to the throne, the daughter of Catherine. Mary came to the throne. No, you know that's not right. Edward came to the throne. His son came to the throne. And Edward made some changes to the churches because Henry had everybody who had been Catholic become members of the Church of England with him at its head. Now Edward is now king, but he's a boy. He makes some changes with things, but he dies fairly quickly, and that's when Mary becomes queen and brings the entire country back to the Roman Catholic Church, whether you liked it or not. As a matter of fact, if you didn't like it, Mary had a special solution for it. There was persecution, there was jail, and there was execution. All of these. She did so much that she earned herself a nickname. That is? Bloody Mary. Excellent. But Mary did not rule for very long. Finally, Henry's youngest daughter, Elizabeth, becomes queen. Now, all of the people in England didn't change their religion in their hearts. They changed it in their practice, but their hearts were still there. When it was Church of England, there were places that some of the nobility would hide priests in their houses and have masses, aside from the masses and the churches in town, to follow the faith that they truly believed in. Now Elizabeth comes to the throne. She wants to be seen as a strong and independent woman, much like her father was. So she brings the entire country back to the Church of England. And again, persecutions are involved. Conspiracies, plots, several assassination attempts. Elizabeth wanted to be seen as a strong and independent woman, so she never gets married. Which brings us back to the problem that Henry had. She never had a legitimate heir. And as she was getting older, it became illegal to speak that she may die one day, even though everyone knows that all of us do. It became illegal to speak that she may die one day, and so there were plots in the background about who was going to be the next ruler of England. So the Spanish wanted a certain number of people, and the French were thinking about others. But many of the noblemen in England wrote letters to the king to the north, James VI of Scotland, that possibly, since he's a cousin of Elizabeth anyway, that he would be a legitimate heir. James agreed to these people, and he made promises to all the different groups. He knew how to play politics. He made promises to all the different religious groups, and there were many, that he would not persecute them if they supported him to be king. There was this new group called Puritans, who wanted to simplify the Church of England, get away from all the practices of the Roman Catholic Church with the holidays and the vestments and the big ceremonies. Simple, straightforward, fundamental faith. That's what they wished for. There were Anabaptists. There were all different, the familists. There were all different people. And he made promises to all of them that they would not be persecuted. They believed him. So when Elizabeth finally does die, James VI of Scotland comes down and becomes James I of England. Proceeds to break every single one of those promises. He is going to have the Bible rewritten. And you all know what the name of that Bible is.
King James.
The King James Version. Took out the marginal notes throughout. That was in the Common Bible for most of us, the Geneva Bible, that explained the context of what was being said in the Bible. So that there would be no discussions, no debates about the content of the Bible. Now it was just what it says and what the priest interpreted it for you. But 2 years after James ascends to the throne, Catholics plotted to execute him. The gunpowder plot of 1605. 35 barrels of gunpowder in the basement of Parliament, where there's going to be a joint session of Parliament. The House of Lords, the House of Commons, all the royal family is going to be there. And at the very last minute, it is discovered. And all those lives are saved. People all over the country were executed for this plot. But this is the world that I grew up in. Everyone on the surface is all belonging to the Church of England, but every small group is spying on their neighbors. And all it takes is 2 people to say that you did something, and you will be convicted. No, he's a Quaker. No, she's a familist. And then the property is seized, and you get a piece of the property. This is going on all over the country. Conspiracies, plots, everything, constantly. That's my world growing up. I grew up in London, in the Smithfield section. Beautiful place. Well, it used to be. There were priories there. There were hospitals there. There's the cattle market. Smithfield is this great open area where people would drive their cattle into the city to sell. And I lived on Cow Lane. Sometimes of the year it was a bit foul. The priories had been dissolved by Henry VIII, and each and every one of the streets in my neighborhood had an entirely different reputation. The next street down from Cow Lane was Cock Lane. And they're not talking about chickens. That's where the prostitutes were. All of this mixed all together into one neighborhood. And then, at the end of August every year, the great St. Bartholomew's Fair at Smithfield. goods from all over the world, actors, entertainers, magicians, theater, exotic goods from the New World were all on display for days upon days upon days, and everyone went, from the highest nobility to the lowest pickpockets. All this noise, this hubbub going on just outside my door. So sometimes I would retreat to my church, St. Sepulchre's, not to go inside, but the churchyard, which has a nice wall and hedge around the outside of it. There's a nice wall and hedge separating me from this hubbub of this world of theft, braggadocio, exotic things going on. And I had this quiet place in a churchyard. I gained a mentor, because my neighborhood, well, my father was a merchant tailor. This is not someone that just sells clothes. This is the one that makes the bespoke clothing for the people at Parliament and court. And the clients would come there and talk to my father. My mother ran a public house across the street. And one of the individuals who used to come to the public house constantly was a fellow you might have heard of, a guy by the name of Captain John McNiff. And he would tell his stories of the New World in Virginia. And as I said, at St. Bartholomew's Fair, there were individuals there who were native to this land that were brought back over and put on display. This is my introduction to this so-called New World. But through my father's business contacts, the Chief Justice of England came and gave me a tap on the shoulder and made me his protege. He would be my mentor. And I would go, because I had taught myself shorthand, I would go to Parliament and to court and take notes for him in shorthand. Do you know what this is? Shorthand. They look like little scribbles on a page, but you can take down words as quickly as they are said, which was invaluable to him, the Chief Justice of England, Sir Edward Coke. I could take down notes of conversations in corridors, of speeches in Parliament, and bring them back to him, and he would know things that he had no chance of knowing any other way. For this, he sent me down to Charterhouse School, where I did learn Latin, Greek, Hebrew, and mathematics, and rhetoric, and several other things, and histories too. And then I went on to Cambridge, Pembroke College in Cambridge, where I picked up on religion. See, throughout all of this, I saw myself at court, I saw myself at Parliament. I thought there might be an avenue for myself to rise up in this world. But it was not to be. I didn't come from the right bloodlines. I was lower down on that great chain of being than they wanted me to be. So I thought the possibility of the church, because bishops could be in Parliament. But that did not work out either. For I saw what they were doing. Do you know of government? The best government, the most active government, is when they make compromises, yes? Would you compromise your faith so that the government does well? You see what they do. They make compromises in what they believe so that they can succeed in this world. And that's not what faith is about. It's about something so much greater than that. In Cambridge, I started studying this religion, and I fell in love with it. And I saw how they were corrupting it. And I became a chaplain for a great lord in Essex, Lord Masham. He had a manor house in Oates, and I was his chaplain there. But the Archbishop of Canterbury, Archbishop Laud, started to persecute anyone who did not follow literally the Church of England's doctrine. And all of us, who by this time a lot of us had become these so-called Puritans who want to simplify the church, get back to basics of what it says in the Gospels, were in trouble. One avenue that was available to us, was made available by friends of mine, was to go to the New World, which we did. 1630, a charter was given to the Massachusetts Bay Company to get rid of Puritans. Go across the ocean and we won't have to persecute you. The charter was given by the king. These were friends of mine. Winthrop and Cotton were people I knew, people that I had worked with in England. And within a few months, I came to join them here in this new world in Boston. They did offer me the position of minister in their town. And I looked around the town and I said, no. They took what we had done in England and changed it. Here, it was merely an extension of the Church of England. For the charter is from the king. They can't break with the Church of England without getting the king mad at him. All our work in England was for naught. So I held up a mirror to them. And they did not like it. So I had to leave Boston and went up to Salem, where I became a minister there. And preaching for a while, the authorities, or the magistrates, if you would, in Boston, did put pressure on Salem to get rid of me, drive him out. They said, if you do that, we'll give you this piece of land you wanted to buy from us. So they did. So I left Salem, and the only place left for me is Plymouth, where I went. I became a teacher and the assistant minister there. And I started to preach. But it's not right for a minister to be paid. That makes you a mercenary. Do it because it's in your heart, but be a working member of the community. But what was I to do? That means I needed a job. I am no farmer. I'm no huntsman. I'm no fisherman. I grew up in a city. What I do know is trade. So I took what English goods I could gather at Plymouth and went out among the native peoples that lived around here, the Wampanoag and the Narragansett. And I traded with them knives, kettles, hoes, blankets, coats, axes. And they did give me beaver fur and food that I could bring back and earn a living that way. Does anybody here speak more than one language? When you learn a new language, it's never just word substitution. Sometimes it's a word, but sometimes it's entire concepts that are so different in between the two languages, but they translate similarly. Here's the example for the rest of you. In English, we have a sheet of paper, yes? What else is a sheet? A sheet goes on the bed. There's a sheet of ice. It's a large, flat, smooth thing, yes? In French, the very same thing is une feuille de papier, a leaf of paper. A leaf. And what does a leaf do? It helps things grow. In the fall, it comes and floats down. Think about the way that changes the way you look at the world. It's not just that one word, but the entire language does that. There are different concepts connected with items. Now, to do my trade with the native peoples, I had to learn their language and realized that they were the true owners of this land. They develop it, they work it every day. They just don't put fences around it the way the English do. So I got back to Plymouth and started saying it. You cannot take this land without making some sort of a deal with it from the native people. Make some sort of a deal with them. It's their land. That didn't go over well. I felt the pressure and decided to leave there and go back up to Salem, where I'm preaching. A minister should not be paid. The natives are the true owners of this land, and that he should repent of receiving it without negotiating with them. That the king had sinned by giving something that did not belong to him away. Needless to say, that did not go over well. And then I think I went a little bit too far. I said that the government can control what you do, but not what you think and not what you believe. That the first tablet of the Ten Commandments for religion. The second tablet is for civil society. Don't steal, don't cheat. The second tablet is for civil society. The first tablet is for your church. They did not like this. They demanded uniformity in the Massachusetts Bay. So in October of 1635, they did arrest me, drag me down to Boston, and chastise me and say, just shut up, Roger, we don't care what you believe. Just shut up. I said, no, I cannot do this. This is truth. And this is all of their souls that need this. So they put me on trial. You know what my crime was? Having new and dangerous opinions against the authority of the magistrates. That was my crime. And for that, I was exiled. It was October. I was not well. So they let me stay for a few months, as long as I promised not to preach my dangerous opinions in church. I agreed to this. They didn't say anything about my house. So after services on Sunday, the crowd at my house was so thick that it was thicker than any of the churches. And that was too much for the authorities. In January, they sent soldiers from Boston up to Salem to arrest me and put me on the next ship back to England. Someone warned me that they were coming. This is January in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. This was the fiercest January that we saw in a long time. The entire Narragansett Bay was frozen over. Snow was hip deep. It was cold. Now, I must remind you, I'm from England. There are palm trees in London. When we get snow, it's a little dusting that falls overnight and then is gone by morning. Rarely, the Thames will freeze over, and then they have great celebrations about this. But to have weather so cold that the bay itself froze, to have snow so deep that you can't open the doors to your house, and that is the weather that I had to leave Salem and trudge southward. I near froze to death. But a hunting party of Wampanoag came and found me, took me in. They knew me. They took me in and gave me shelter during the winter, fed me, cared for me, and then gave me land across the Seekonk River in what I think you folks call East Providence. Settlers from Salem and other places came, and we started a town there. We started building our houses. We started planting our crops. When I got a letter from the governor of Plymouth saying, Roger, we like you, but you're still within the bounds of the Plymouth colony. You have to leave. I got into a canoe, sailed down the 10-mile river across the Seekonk River to Slate Rock. I met a group of Narragansetts. I explained the situation, and they took me around the point of land and up the Great Salt River to the Great Salt Cove. The Mashasaka and the Winasquatucket, and a great area of salt water, a tidal pool, if you would, with lobster, clams, oyster. The two rivers were full of salmon at certain times in the year, and not the small salmon that you might be aware of. These were 60, 70 pounds apiece. And we made a deal for the land, that I could have this, that I could live there with my friends, as long as I acted as a good neighbor, interpreted for them, advocated for them, wrote things down for them, and let them have any of the English goods that they wanted from my store. This was the deal. We were going to live here as neighbors and treat each other with the courtesy of neighbors. Others came and settled in my town. And the first agreement we made was we would make laws by the majority vote of the people, but only in civil things. We would make no religious laws here. In our town, church and state would be separate. Not because church was unimportant, because it's too important to be tied to something like government. And that no one would be persecuted for what they believe. Now, up in Massachusetts Bay, my old friends are saying this would bring chaos. It did. Anne Hutchinson and her crew left Boston and came to talk to me, and we negotiated for the town of Portsmouth with the natives. People left Portsmouth and started the town of Newport. Another rascal by the name of Samuel Gorton was kicked out of Plymouth, kicked out of Portsmouth, came to Providence, didn't like it, went to the edge of Providence and started the town he called Charlotte, until soldiers from Boston came down to arrest him. They took him back, and he complained to the Commissioner of the Colonies in England that they had no authority to come and arrest him. He was not in their land, and he had never sworn allegiance to them. So the Commissioner of the Colonies forced Boston to release Gorton, give him back his place, and in honor of that, Gorton named the place after the Commissioner of the Colonies, the Earl of Warwick. Now we have these 4 towns. We have agreements with the native peoples, but we have no documents to keep other English out. To have Massachusetts or the new towns in Connecticut to come in and take this stuff from us. So I made 2 trips back to England. 2. Now, to cross this ocean takes 2 months. 2 months. Where were you 2 months ago? New Year's. Your New Year's, not mine. New Year's. Think of all the food you've eaten since New Year's until today. Picture it. Now dry it, smoke it, or salt it, and stack it into wooden barrels and put it in the bottom of the ship. Picture everything you've had to drink from New Year's until today. Put that into wooden barrels, and put that in the bottom of the ship. Picture wearing clothes like this from New Year's until today. How many people know boating very well? What happens to your clothing on a boat? It gets wet. We're crossing the Atlantic in the cold months, so that ice is forming on the outside of our clothes. These are great wooden ships. How do you heat a wooden ship? You don't. Fire that. You don't heat a wooden ship. So we are, well, you've had a snowball fight, yes? You know how cold your hands get? Our whole bodies are that cold for most of the 2 months. They're damp, it's cold. Most of them are farmers, they've never been on a boat, and they're seasick. There's one bucket over in the corner. The stench of 100 people in an area smaller than this room for 2 months, because the sailors don't want us on deck, because we could fall off. 2 months to cross the ocean. I did it 5 times. First I'd come over here, and then I went back to England twice to get paperwork for this colony. The first time I got a patent from Parliament. It said Providence plantations in Narragansett Bay, in New England, in America. And Newport got upset because they weren't mentioned. So Codrington decided that Newport was going to be his own governor for life, he called himself, and parts of Connecticut Island and several other places, and he decides he's going to go off that way. So John Clark from Newport, the surgeon, and myself went back to England. And there's an advantage of growing up around the Chief Justice of England. Our second trip was during the Commonwealth. And my cousin happened to be the Lord Protector of England, Oliver Cromwell. And most of the members of Parliament that were still there knew who I was because of my mentor. And so we worked together. John Clark worked for 12 years after I left to get a document for this colony that was rich in freedoms. Have you ever seen the charter of this place? If you haven't, see it. It is a powerful, powerful document. And any English English teachers here? It's a run-on sentence. It is all one sentence long. Because it is the word of the king. And if you put a period, what does a period mean when you put it there? It's the end of the thought, yes? So if you put a period in it, he would have to introduce himself again because it's the word of the king. And they didn't want to do that, so it's one long run-on sentence of 3 pages, all handwritten in little letters. But it starts off with a great picture of Charles II, the king, in the top corner. Charles II, by the grace of God, king of etc., 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 etc. This charter was unique in liberty in the old world and the new. It gave us more freedoms, more liberties than anyone else did. It said, in this colony, no person can be punished for what they believe. Everywhere else, people are being punished just on their beliefs. Wars were fought in between France and Spain and England over religion. In our colony, no person can be punished for what they believe. This made us a refuge for persecuted people, not just in New England, but all over the world. Toro Synagogue down in Newport. They came from Brazil to here for this freedom. The very first Baptist church that I helped gather in Providence, because nobody was persecuted. Quakers down in Newport, the Quaker Meeting House. Quakers were hanged up in Boston. You were free to follow your own beliefs in Rhode Island. There would be a separation of church and state here. Further on in the document is what makes it even more extraordinary. Because with this separation of church and state, it's not the church that decides who runs things. The people of Rhode Island get to vote and elect our own governor and our own General Assembly. Most other colonies, the king would appoint a governor who would be a friend of his. And that person would go to the colony and stuff his pockets with as much riches as he could from that colony, and then go back to England and live like a lord. Here, they were taking on something that I wrote in 1644, that the foundation of civil power lies in the people. And the people have a right to create a government that fits their needs, has as much power as they give it, and lasts only as long as they wish. That great chain of being that I mentioned at the beginning, when you separate church and state, it cuts the chain. The people that are down low now have the power of a foundation that supports the rest of everything. They make the decisions about what's going to happen. That's you, each and every one of you. We created a place where no one is persecuted for what they believe, where the people have the power to create the government that we have. This is the first. Other colonies copied us, but our charter of 1663, that's a precious document. Now what happens to that? It's not up to me anymore. It's up to you. Thank you, folks. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Why would the king approve a charter that contained all these things that were not allowed in England and that he would not have believed in?
Excellent question. The king, Charles II, had been in exile during the Commonwealth period when my cousin was the Lord Protector of England. The previous king had his head chopped off, and Parliament is running everything. So, Charles II fled to France, fled to Italy. He's the head of the Church of England in 2 Catholic countries. He sees things there. In Italy, he stays with Galileo's family. He learns about this new way of looking at the world called the scientific method. That's why it says on the charter that this will be a lively, experiment. When he comes back to England, he knows about the turmoil in the Commonwealth between various religious groups fighting each other for dominance. And this is the kind of thing that could make, as they say in your day, great headlines. He will give religious freedom to this small colony as an experiment to see if it can work to pacify all the religious fighting that's been going on for centuries in Europe. That's what makes the headlines. The flip side of what's really going on, because politics is never just what it says in the headlines. When Charles II came back to the throne of England, there were still people of authority, members of Parliament and other people of authority in England, that had signed the death warrant of his father. So he went after them. They were called the regicides. He actually dug up Oliver Cromwell's body, had it hanged, and then had the head chopped off and put on Westminster for about 20 years. It stayed out there. Dead man, dug up, hung, head chopped off. Any of the regicides that they could find, Charles went after. Many of them fled to Massachusetts and Connecticut, two good Puritan colonies. What's the worst thing you can do to good, solid Puritan colonies without sending troops over to capture those people? Put a place right in between them with complete religious freedom. It'd be maddening. It's his best revenge. But that's the kind of things that happen with politics, yes? Other questions, please.
How did you end up coming to North Kingstown and trading?
Right over here.
Yeah.
This is Narragansett country. And the road, the big road that's out here, they call it Route 1, I guess now, is a Narragansett highway that goes from Boston all the way to Manhattan. It's been used for, as they say, forever. It's always been their major north-south highway. So, I'm in Providence. There's too many people squawking at each other. It's not a crowded place. I'm used to London, but this is all people that will, banging on my door at all hours of the, Roger, can you come fix this? Roger, can you settle this for us? I earned my living by trading with the native people. So I came away from there to where the Narragansett were and did trade with them down here. I would spend months down here, just on the major highway there. And then Richard Smith did buy my land to finance my first trip back to England. And that's when he started with the house at Cocoscussock. But it's putting your trading post on the main road, a little bit out of town, if you would, where travelers and passers-by have to go by you, and people of all different nations are coming by there, whether they're Pequot or Mohican or Wampanoag coming up, because they're Mohican, Narragansett and Wampanoag are all related. They're all cousins and neighbors and such, so they're all coming by each other. Yes. In the back there, yes, sir.
Can you tell us about your book you wrote?
The Key to the Language of America is one of them. Is that the one?
That's the one.
Ah. It is a key with which you can unlock a box which contains many more keys. It is a phrase book of the Narragansett language. And each chapter is a different part of their language. The first chapter is how you say hello. There's a chapter on the stars in the sky. There's a chapter on numbers. There's a chapter on animals. And each chapter has a different subject. So the importance of it is with that book, that key, you might be able to enter into a dialogue with the people that are already here. And with that, be a good neighbor, if you might. And at the end, as was mentioned earlier, I think, there's poetry at the end of each chapter, just sort of round things out. They got a little bit wrong with that one there. It's boast not, proud English, of thy birth and blood. Thy brother Indian is by birth as good. Of one blood God made him and thee and all, as wise, as fair, as strong, Did that answer your question? Yes, sir.
This is kind of a big question.
Sure.
How did you establish property with the Indians? Because you said that you sold something to Mr. Smith.
Ah,
How did you get title, if you will?
as time went on when we were here, these places were considered our property. When I first came here, there was a different way of interacting with the native peoples. And they gave us the land of province. There was no amount of money that could purchase that. But the land down here, in Rhode Island and Prudence Island, were a trade with the Native Americans for a certain amount of goods to be able to have that island. And when I was done with my trading post on the land here at Cocomscusset, I did sell it to Richard Smith to finance the trip. So the settlement at Providence was a different kind of transaction than the land pieces here and the Rhode Island and Prudence Island.
So you moved off someplace else. Did you then acquire property, and how did you do it?
Once I was here, I had my place in Providence, yes, and the boundaries of that are the falls at Pawtucket, out to Newtoconkinit Hill to the falls at Patuxent, backed by the Seekonk River, if you would. That was a gift to me from the Narragansett. And we subdivided that among my friends as they did come. This was the only other place that I lived and had a trading post with the native peoples. It's down here, just along the brook there, if you would. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Sure.
All right, I'm a young son. I grow.
Yes?
I want to have my own farm.
Yes.
How do I acquire property?
There's a kick. Yes. Usually the eldest son inherits the property.
Right.
The second son goes into the church. The third son goes into the military. There's a whole hierarchy, the same way that the crown princes deal with it, that the first one becomes the next king. That's what happens with property rights too. But a lot of people end up dividing their land among their family members. And then they don't have much land anymore. And that's when they end up moving to the west. But there is always more land to the west. The Dutch are in New Amsterdam, just down the coast a ways. And they have settlements and land purchases that you can be involved with along the Hudson there. To the north, along Sebago and northern parts of Massachusetts up there, there is plenty of land up there. The growing season is shorter, but there is many people moving inland into central Massachusetts, which goes all the way to the next ocean, by the way. They're purchasing bits of land up there. See, there was a devastating plague that went through this entire area in between 1616 and 1619. The Narragansett were not affected by this plague, but most of the tribes from Gloucester all the way out through Cape Cod were decimated to the point of 9 out of 10 people dying. So, while they still owned the land, there was nobody there to use the land. That's why the people settled at Plymouth and Massachusetts Bay thought they could just come in and take it, because there were a few people there. Remember, they said God cleared the land for them. They thought that God had literally struck down the native peoples and cleared it for them. Yes?
Was there any way Rhode Island could have avoided King Philip's War?
Yes. If the United Colonies had stayed out. Rhode Island did not wish to be part of King Philip's War. We did not field an army. We did not field troops. We were negotiating up until the very first shot was fired. We were negotiating for peace. And I had actually thought that the storm had passed. We had Governor Andros of New York going to come here and talk to Philip and settle things. The shots were fired at the Wampanoag. And their war parties took to the field. Now, mind you, there's only 80 Wampanoag warriors. That's it. That's the sum total of the entire Wampanoag army is 80 warriors. They sent their old men, women, and children to go live with the Narragansett here. So those 80 warriors are now using their hunting tricks. Ambush, herding, attacking, and running back. All the way up to Mount Wachusett. The Massachusetts Bay wanted to make sure the Narragansett, who were strong and had many, many people, some say 20,000 Narragansett, they wanted to make sure that they stayed out of the war. So the Narragansett sent emissaries up to the Massachusetts Bay Colony, and they signed a treaty that they would stay out of this war. That they had no bit in Philip and Plymouth's argument. They would stay out of this war. And as the emissaries are coming back to Narragansett territory with the piece of paper in their hand, the magistrates in Boston said, oh, one more thing. You must turn over those Wampanoag refugees that you have given shelter to, so that we may have them as hostages. These people prize honor and their word above everything. They had given their word that these refugees would be safe with them. So Canancha of the Narragansett said, not a Wampanoag, nor the paring of a Wampanoag's nail. And that's when Massachusetts Bay decided that they were going to come and invade this place. With an army from Massachusetts Bay, from Plymouth and Connecticut. They came into Smith's Castle and have formed up their army. And attacked the Narragansett and the Great Swamp. The United Colonies, as they called themselves, did not want Rhode Island as a member because we were too radical. 700 men, women, and children were slain in the Great Swamp of the Narragansett. The English army retreated. Connecticut forces were taken off by boat, but the others walked back home. In January of 1676, eating their shoes because they were starved. But Canancha assembled his army after the massacre and marched up the west side of Narragansett Bay while sending word up to Mount Wachusett to the other tribes to march on the English and push them into the ocean. So across central Massachusetts, an army is marching and destroying towns, burning them to the ground. People are fleeing. And Canancha is marching north, burning everything on the mainland. Warwick is gone. Comes up to Providence, burns my own house down, even after I'm out there negotiating with them. Canancha is captured up in Cumberland area on the Blackstone. And it was his force of personality that was holding this army together. Once he is gone, the war lasts a few more months until Philip is killed. Did we have an opportunity? Rhode Island did what it could. It was not our idea. To give you an idea, in the entire colony of Rhode Island, there were about 1,500 English at the beginning of the war. There were 15,000 to 20,000 Narragansett. English made up 10% of the population of this colony. They were our neighbors. Places I understand today still bear Narragansett names. Yes? More than any of the other English colonies, yes? That's because the English started speaking with the native names. Quannakitok, Musqueamcut, Kokomskasset. All of these. So, did that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Yes?
I have read, and you kind of debated, that you were part of the decision, you were part of a council, sat on a council that voted to send the wife and children of
rather jumbled. The wife and children were only sent there after the war, so that wouldn't have been the impetus to starting the war. I'll tell you what the situation was at the end of the war. Philip is dead. Metacom is dead. In Providence, we have about 500 prisoners. Our entire town is ashes. We don't have any place to live. There's maybe 30, 40 people in Providence with 500 prisoners. Now, if you were to ask any English in all of New England, what should we do with these prisoners? The universal cry would be, slay them, for they made war against the English.
But Metacom was dead.
He was already dead. I'm talking about these 500 in Providence. The universal cry would be to slay them. Yes? Your houses are gone. Your stores are gone. Everything you own is burned to the ground because of what they did. They made war against the English. What do the English do when someone makes war on them? Look at the Irish. They go there, they burn, they destroy, and send the people away to the Caribbean as slaves. Yes? We had to figure out what to do with these people. There was not enough food for us, never mind 500 more. Now, some might say, release them. Yes? The war is still going on up in Maine. You release them, some at least will go and continue with the war. That serves no purpose. The others say, slay them. Do you want the blood on your hands? The only viable solution that we had was to bind them and send them down to the Caribbean as indentured servants. The lesson here, and why war is horrible, is that sometimes there are no good answers. War is a horrible, horrible thing. It should be avoided at all costs. Did that answer your
Yes,
question?
except I'm speaking about before the war, and that's what made Metacom so angry that he burned everything.
His wife and child were with him until after the war. He was slain, then they were sent down.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I had in my head, that I've heard this before, that it was the Brown and Phillips purchase of Lafayette, and there was the Pettisquancy purchase. And then it was supposedly frozen, and nobody was supposed to purchase anything until some Indians were made drunk, and they sold Potawatomi and Quonset Point, and that's what really got the Narragansetts into the war. Is that correct?
Yes, because they were illegal purchases.
Right.
Yes. Because they were not done through the colony.
Right.
And you also must remember the Narragansett were subjects of the king. They were not just native people living among them. They had submitted themselves as independent princes and people to the king in 1644, I believe. Samuel Gorton negotiated that for them. So in our charter, it mentions them as powerful princes and people under our dominion.
Didn't you, Roger, didn't you stop that from going back to the Indians? And wasn't there something you used influence or something to let that purchase continue?
The Potawatomi purchase? No.
Yeah.
No.
You
No.
won.
We fought that top to bottom.
Okay, all right. I thought, for some reason,
Yeah.
I thought that was part of the reason.
Yeah, there was no legitimacy to it. It was not run through Rhode Island courts, and it was not done by the leaders of the Narragansett. Yes, sir.
That moment where there's 500 people in Providence, I think at some point you had a slave child.
Well,
Is
indentured
that where
person.
you acquired that person?
Well, at the end of each one of these wars, servitude was one of the things to take these people in, give them a new home, give them a place to live, so that they may be productive. We didn't have prisons, as they do in England, where you can just throw them into a hole and forget about them. Now, there's a young child, his parents are dead. You'll let them just wander around in the woods or take them in. They are not, as you had mentioned, slaves. They are indentured to us. They stay for a period of time with us. And they are provided for. They sit at our table with us. They live in the same house we do. And then, after a period of time, they are given encouragement to go off on their own. This also works with English people that fall into debt. They are also treated the exact same way. Or Dutch people, or Spanish people. We don't have a place to put them away and feed them at our own expense, away from everything, so that they do nothing. That does not produce anything. It's not productive for them, and it's not productive for us. So we take them into our homes. Yes, they have to work. We're working right next to them. They're in servitude for a period of time as a way to work off debt, give them an education, give them training, and then they're free to go. Does that make sense?
Yeah, what happened to him?
He was released. He went off and probably became a very prosperous person. We took in a Dutch boy at one point by the name of Clausen, who the natives had found wandering around naked in the woods. And they brought them to me because they knew I spoke Dutch. So I spoke to him, took him in, clothed him, fed him, brought him up. He became a carpenter and became very wealthy. In 1652, a resolution was passed in Rhode Island forbidding permanent enslavement of blacks or whites. That's the wording of it, blacks or whites. Native Americans were added to that in the 1670s, so that there is no chattel slavery as it later became known. There's a period of indenture. It may be involuntary, but there's a period of service, and then they're free. They earn money when they're doing this. Good? Yes, sir.
So if you have an indentured servant that's not working out for you or them, can you trade them off to someone else?
You could.
Because they have
Since
a
they're
debt
sitting
deal?
at your table with you and eating, what would you do if it was your child?
I wouldn't trade them off to someone else.
Now, mind you, trading your children off to another family is something that is often done to send them to a family that has different sets of skills so they may learn those skills. About the age of 7 or 8, you send them to live with another family for the next 10 years. So that is done. But what would you do if it was your child? If your child refused to work? Never mind being an indentured servant, what would you do?
I would try to correct that.
That. Then you understand the way that it works. It's not a matter of taking people and physically punishing them all the time. You want to bring them up and to be good people. So you treat them like good people. One of the things about the native servants that we had here in New England, one of the biggest problems we had with them is that they'd walk away. They knew the land. So some night they would just get up, walk out the door, and keep going. Nobody sent hounds after them. Yes, ma'am?
I wondered about communication. Did the Indians know English when you arrived, or did you teach them English, or how did you learn Indian languages and all that?
The best word to describe me learning the native languages is immersive. I went and spent time with them because I wished to learn their language. Many of them already spoke English.
They did.
Native people here were very quick at picking up English. But remember, I wasn't the first Englishman here. Englishmen had been coming, Europeans had been coming here since, well, Verrazano was 1524. That may be French and Italian, but there were probably Englishmen in this crew. Off the coast of Maine in 1604, there was an English fisherman harrowing some native fishermen to trade with them out on the water in boats. And the natives came over using one of their coats as a sail on their canoe because they were imitating the English. And as they're trading, one of the Englishmen saw the tobacco pouch at the belt of the native, and he's reaching over to the canoe, grabs the tobacco pouch, not expecting this. The native looks at him in the eye and goes, "How now are you so saucy with my tobacco?" ocean was not as great a barrier as many think. Fishermen have been coming over here for centuries. Traders have been coming over here. Yes, sir.
How would you assess the role of the Rhode Island story in the founding of the United States?
What is this, United States? Okay, I'm going to take my hat off for a second. I'm John. What Rhode Island did set the mark for the Carolinas, set the lock for many, set the lock for many of the other colonies. Roger, this is something that I'm working on. The Enlightenment didn't come full-blown out of the head of Zeus, if you would. Jefferson and all of those people didn't come already out of nowhere and just establish everything. There were steps to get there. And one of the biggest steps to have is a foundation. And Roger is key in establishing this place, have it work, have it on paper, and have it be successful. He's one of the foundation blocks of what later became the Enlightenment. That this idea that your soul, your soul, your soul is up to you to decide what happens to it, not the governments. That's Jefferson. And if you take a look at what Roger writes about government, and then you look at what Jefferson writes in the Declaration of Independence, if you were a college professor, you'd say it was plagiarism. I cannot make a direct chain link in between the two, but what Roger did here set the ball in motion that Jefferson took and ran with. Does that make sense? Okay. I'm putting the hat back on. Yes, Mom?
You mentioned something about take it to the courts. Where were the lawyers coming from? I don't think we had schools here yet. Did you import them all?
No. But Harvard was there.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. About courts here. The question is about courts. Did we have schools? Did we have lawyers? Harvard was 1638. It's established. There are people coming over here that are fully trained lawyers. John Clark is a surgeon. He didn't learn it here. So people are coming over with their skills and employing themselves as best is known. My mentor was the Chief Justice of England. I know a little bit about how the sausage is made, if you understand. Okay? And I know a little bit about the law. Samuel Gorton was trained in a legal background. So there's enough of us to understand how to do things correctly and how to word it so that the authorities back in the old country will understand what we intend. Yes, sir?
Where did the name Rhode Island originate?
3 sources, all working together with a certain Rhode Island flair to it. Giovanni da Verrazzano in 1524 said one of the islands around here was about the same size and shape as the Isle of Rhodes. Number 2, Adrian Block, Dutch explorer, 1604, called one of the islands Red Island, which in Dutch is Rhode Island. Number 3, for the English, a safe, sheltered anchorage. And entire Narragansett Bay was called Anchor Bay by the Dutch. A safe, sheltered anchorage for the English is called a road. Example, Hampton Roads down in Virginia. Newport Harbor, safe, sheltered anchorage. That's the Rhode Island. So you have all 3. Now you have Rhode Islanders' certain twist on loving a pun and using them all 3 sources together at the same place. Yes? Yes, Mom?
The chart that you referred to, did it refer to Rhode Island and the Providence Plantation?
Yes,
referring
because
to Newport and the Providence
yes,
Plantation.
Rhode Island is the Isle of Aquidneck.
Yep.
Providence Plantations are the mainland settlements on the mainland. At one point, this place had 5 capitals. You all know this, yes? Providence, East Greenwich, North Kingston, Newport, and Bristol. And the government acted like a circuit court. going from one capital to the next. All our state houses are still here. But there was not one capital for this conglomeration. Does this make sense? Because it didn't to anybody else. Take my hat off again for a second. That lasted up until about the 1840s. And they said, this is too complicated. So now we're only going to have two state capitals, Providence and Newport, which lasted until 1900, when the really, 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 really rich people that lived here, like the Aldriches, okay, decided that, you know, the General Assembly appoints the senators from the states. People didn't vote on senators yet. Okay. The General Assembly appointed the state senators to go down to Washington. And one of our senators was Nelson W. Aldrich. He was chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee. You can pass any bill you want. If it doesn't get appropriations, it doesn't do anything. The President of the United States would come to Aldrich's estate right next to Rocky Point to negotiate with Aldrich about what was going to happen in the world and in the country. He was called the Governor General of the United States. And so to make a nice temple to government for the people that put him in power, they decided to build one of the largest self-supporting marble domes in the world in Providence and make that the state's capital. Now, if you've ever been there, okay, I suggest that you go down Smith Street a bit and take a look at the triple deckers that are there. And then walk from the Smith Street side, walk up to the State House, realizing the size of those triple deckers, because that's where the people are living. It's meant to overwhelm. It's not meant to be big, beautiful building. It's meant to overwhelm you. And when you go inside there and you stand in the rotunda, you could put one of those triple deckers right inside there. It's meant to just put you in awe of what this place is. Yes, Mom?
Do you think Roger Williams would be overwhelmed with the state of government today?
This is being live streamed, right?
In defense of Roger Williams, he made it through Parliament and the courts of England. I think he would have done just fine.
Oh, the thing to remember is that many times Roger's life was at risk in what he was doing. If he had stayed in England, he would be in jail or executed. If he had stayed in Massachusetts, he would have been sent back to England to be in jail or executed. There were many times walking from Salem into the wilderness in the cold of winter to avoid being arrested, nearly dying, because of truth. But your soul is yours. It's not mine to determine what happens to it. It's not mine to tell you how you're to take care of it. The same with all of you. If you believe in your soul, it's up to you to take care of it. It's not anybody else's authority, job, duty. You can ask for help for someone that has studied things. You can talk to them about it, but they don't have authority over you. That was Roger's point. You are the one that's responsible. You are the one that will either be glorified or not. It's your responsibility, not anybody outside of you. There are many things that happen in this country that want to take that authority away from you. And Roger would be waving a big flag. Or, as he did in Salem, you know the English flag at the time was a big white flag with a red cross in the middle of it, which was awarded by the Pope to Henry VIII as defender of the faith. That was the flag of England. And he and another fellow shimmied up the flagpole and cut the red cross out as an act of protest. Roger was nonviolent throughout his whole life. When things were presented to him, he wanted people to settle things by discussing them, by coming to a consensus, by voting on things together in brotherly love and friendship, in dealing with the native peoples. He saw them as human beings when other people said they can't be. They're not in the Bible. That was one of their arguments. They can't be human, they're not in the Bible. But if you stand next to them, you know they're human. There are very few people in the world today that stood up and spoke truth to authority with Roger's vigor, passion, and enthusiasm. Yes, Mom?
So when did you start?
Doing this? Well, I'll give you the longer version of the short story, okay? I was an archaeologist around here for 10 years, okay? And I knew about Roger Williams, and as an archaeologist, when you're dealing with Native American finds, you start reading Roger because he's one of the few people, as an authority, that lived at the time and wrote about them. So we're working on sites and we're trying to figure out what we're finding, what we're seeing. And there was, you know where the old Navy housing is, just north of here? Before they tore out the Navy housing and put in those things, we did archaeology along one of the inlets there and came upon a shell midden. That's where they would have a clam bake for generation after generation after generation, toss all the shells in one big pile. By one big pile, I mean about the length of one of this entire row here, and about, from here down to the floor. And it's like a layer cake, because they toss the shells there, and then dirt comes in, blows in on top, and then the next year they toss more shells in, and you can tell which shellfish they're going after each year. Is it the same? Are there changes? They're throwing other garbage in there. Things that normally don't get preserved, like bits of leather, tools, stone tools. When we got to the top 1.5 feet, there were nails, there was Dutch pottery, there was English pottery, broken, of course, but it was all there in the pile. And you know what was right across the inlet from us? And then it goes back to the key to the language. There's a chapter about making deals and trading, talking about how they drive hard bargains. Knowing that Dutch Island is right out here, Kokomskusuk is traded close to Dutch Island is right out here, it just came to me, you've seen videos of people haggling for stuff at a market, right? Narragansett come to Roger. Roger, I love that brass pot. That's just exactly what we're looking for. You want 7 fathoms of wampum for it. The Dutch have the same one for 4. Come on. It's seeing these kinds of things that made this a story about real people and not just names and dates in a book. I've held their bones in my hand. They're real people. I got the opportunity in '97 to start working with the Park Service at the Roger Williams National Memorial because I already had a background on Roger. And the more you read of the stuff he wrote, not what people write about him, but the stuff that he wrote, the more you start to get a picture of what this person was like, what his motivations were. You see a man of many different conflicts. But you see a man consistently is talking about loving your neighbor, doing things peaceably, and having people come together and talk, rather than having violence break out. There's one letter that he wrote from England. No, it was here. He was writing it to the town of Providence. I'm seeing it in my head right now. You know they use quills to write the letters. And he's talking about a problem that's going on in between different factions in the town. He says, if you don't settle this peacefully, it's going to end up in bloodshed. And on the word bloodshed, the quill broke. And there's a splotch of ink on the page. And his mind is racing so quickly to get the next items on the page, to try and settle this for them, to give them options to settle this, that he doesn't stop and resharpen the pen. He uses the broken pen to continue the letter. So every time he dips it, there's a splotch of ink on the page. Those letters are the closest you can get physically to Roger, because it was a thought in his head, and down his arm to that pen in his hand, and then ink on the paper. Those are the kinds of motivations that got me going to do this. I started doing Roger probably about 8 or 9 years ago. Because he's so complex, before that I didn't feel that I had enough of his real character to be able to do it right. Does that make sense? Over here.
Yes.
Okay.
Roger Williams, at the end, I've heard a myth that he was buried underneath an apple tree. It became the root of that tree, which was dug up, in fact, at some point in time. Any truth to that myth?
Good question. He was buried in his backyard. The hat goes off again. He's buried in his backyard, where everybody was buried in their own backyards. Descendants wanted, after the founding of the United States and time had passed and history was becoming important again, about 1860, a group of descendants wanted to create a monument to Roger Williams. And this was going to be at Prospect Park on the hill of the east side. It was going to be a 200-foot tall beacon with a rotating light. You know why? Because a 200-foot tall beacon on top of Prospect Park, you could see it from Boston. So they went to where they had knowledge that the graves were for the house of Roger Williams. The foundation was still there at the time. So they dug, and they found the outline of the graves, and they dug down, and they hit an apple tree root, which, strangely enough, goes straight, branches about where the hips would have been in the grave, because you could see the outline of the casket. Goes down, bends around where the knees would have been, and goes down, and then the tree root turns up where the feet would have been. There's no label on the grave, there's no gravestone, there's no brass plaque that says this is the grave of Roger Williams. But that tree root went right down the center of the grave cut, inside the coffin outline, looking very much like the backbone and the legs of Roger Williams. It's on display in the carriage house, not the carriage house, it's on display at the John Brown House if you want to go see it. They have it there. Yes?
You sound like a pretty reasonable person, an empathetic person. If you were alive today,
All right.
would you be in favor of reparations for Native Americans and blacks who ancestors were slaves?
Who their ancestors were.
Pardon?
Their ancestors were, not them.
No.
That is a very difficult question. What is their situation today? Do they need help? These people that are asking for something, do they need help?
It's healing of the wounds.
Well, but do they need help?
What the white man did to the Native Americans.
If someone comes to you and they need help, what does Christ say to do?
Who say to do?
Christ.
Help. Christ.
It says take your coat off and give it to them. Yes? Anyone that comes to help you. Yes? Anyone that comes and asks you for help.
Yes. I'm not sure you're evading the question.
I don't think so. If someone is coming and asking
What
for
does
help,
religion have to do with it?
it may not for you, but for me, that's how I live my life. Yes, sir.
I'm thinking about citizenship. I go back to talking into the war, you say there were 30 of us and 500 of these.
Right.
And I'm thinking, in all these little towns, you had Englishmen, you had Indians, you probably had half-breeds, okay? And you might have had some Dutch.
You did, yes.
All right, now, if you're all adults, which adults got to vote at that time or to make it?
Adult heads of households.
All right. Can you talk a little bit about how the concept of universal citizenship spread?
It's a little bit after my time, because
Yes, yes.
these people are all In my time, we are here. And we're not so much citizens as subjects. Yes?
But, all right, you are a subject and the Indian is a subject,
Yes.
so you have that in common.
Yes.
Okay.
The native Narragansett, I'm not saying all native, but the Narragansett submitted themselves to the king.
So that's a level, a social level,
Technically, yes.
all right.
They are as much a subject to the king as I am. But they have their princes here, whereas the princes for the English are back in England. If that makes sense.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Roger, you have been most generous with your time, and you're about a half an hour over what you had agreed to. I'm very thankful, but let's take one more question, and that'll be it.
Right there.
You, Roger Williams,
Yes.
had 5 children. Could you tell us how, 6 children, could you tell us how they handled your legacy going forward?
They didn't. They didn't. They went off and did their own thing. The girls got married and had their own families, and the boys went off and did various other things. Providence died young. Joseph and Daniel had businesses and trades and land and property and farms, but they did not deal much of a legacy of me. They did not go into the family business, if you will.
You weren't famous for him, so.
What's that?
You weren't famous then.
Oh. I'll tell you, I guarantee most people in New England and in New Amsterdam and in good part of London knew who I was.
Just tell us, where is the Roger Williams Museum?
The National Memorial is at 282 North Main Street in Providence. It's right at the corner of Smith and North Main. There's a small park, 4.5 acres there.
But I thought you mentioned a museum.
There's a visitor center there. Yeah. Thank you all, folks.
That's it. Thank you all for coming. The next event is May 8th. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Send it to